It was one less we had to kill.
We were told the Japanese are small, they have thick lenses, they can't see, you can whip in one hand, tie behind you. That was not the truth. These troops were absolutely fantastic fighters.
Lieutenant General Takeshi Takashina commands nearly 19,000 troops on Guam. His aim, to annihilate the invading Americans before they can advance off the beaches. His men prepare pillboxes and trenches and place artillery close to the island's main airfield and harbor. Aerial photographs reveal some of these deadly defenses. U.S. intelligence also studies the island's coast. Dangerous reefs surround Guam. The Americans decide that the beaches along the western coast are the most suitable for their amphibious landing. July 21st, 1944, W-Day, the code name for the day of the invasion, begins. At 5:30 a.m., American battleships, cruisers, and rocket ships begin their final barrage of the month-long bombardment of the Japanese positions.
The big ships were pummeling it with 14 and 12-inch guns, and up there were little carrier planes, and they were peeling off, coming down and dropping bombs and firing the rockets.
I don't know how that island why it didn't sink. They threw enough armor in there, that thing should have gone down to the bottom.
Aerial photos show the island after the attack. The results are devastating. The American invasion is a huge tactical gamble. Army and Marine units will land two amphibious forces almost 7 miles apart on either side of the Orote Peninsula. From these two separate beachheads, they aim to drive through enemy defenses to link up and cut off thousands of Japanese from the mainland. It is a risky and unprecedented tactic. But if they successfully capture the Orote Peninsula, the island's main airfield and harbor will be in American hands. W-Day, 7:30 a.m. The order is given to land the landing force. Troops board their amphibious tractors and landing craft and prepare themselves for combat.
It got very somber because now we know we're going into combat.
You're deadly concerned, and you are kind of afraid because, after all, it was only 18, 19 years old.
At 18, I wasn't that emotionally as scared as the older fella. I guess scared came later.
Reconnaissance aircraft capture the invasion fleet as over 50,000 Marines and soldiers of the United States Army head for the beaches of Guam. They prime themselves for a military gamble that could cost the lives of thousands. Fighting men will be
Gentlemen, that's part 1 of 5 I have listed here. We're going to play just a little bit of music meanwhile for a break.
If I see but don't have love, I might see some breath. If I speak with the silver tongue, convince the crowd don't have I leave a bitter taste with every word I say. So
Alright, we're back with part 2 coming up now.
On the northern beaches, amphibious tractors known as Amtraks lead the attack as they come ashore between Adalup and Asan points. They would go down in history as the Devil's Horns.
But then I heard all this clatter, bang-a-rang-a-rang, and everything going on. It was something like standing in the middle of a whole company of jackhammers. The noise was just awful.
And then I remember getting on shore, and things were just blowing to bits, trees and logs and stuff. And we were at the foot of a huge hill that was in front of us, that was the ridge line along the coastline there.
The Marines advanced toward the high ground, where deadly Japanese fortifications overlooked the northern beaches. Meanwhile, 7 miles south, the Japanese have the other landing force dead center in a lethal crossfire from artillery.
There were cases where the Amtrak literally disappeared and arms and legs and torsos flying all over the place. It was a frightening spectacle for these young Marines to see.
They had had 2 years to place their artillery and mortars. They got 11 of those Amtraks. Before we got ashore, it was horrible, absolutely horrible.
The southern landing force is ripped to pieces before it even hits land. In the north, the Marines face a near vertical climb. The American tactical gamble to liberate the island is in danger of faltering at the shoreline. The beaches have become a killing zone. If the Americans don't storm the Japanese coastal defenses, they'll never make it home alive. July 21st, 1944, the Pacific island of Guam. American troops are caught in a vicious Japanese crossfire as they head for shore. 50,000 men land on 2 separate beachheads to the north and south of the vital Orote Peninsula. Off the southern beaches, enemy artillery fire annihilates U.S. Marines as they advance in their amphibious tractors.
I've had them blowing up on either side of us and behind us. And you're thinking, wow, am I going to be next? And it creates quite a problem psychologically.
It was 2 artillery pieces, and they were having a field day. They were landing on the right and the left. I figured the next one almost ought to be right in our lap. A little extra praying. And you kind of, you felt you were a Marine. You're supposed to be able to put up with that stuff. That's your job.
Dozens of Amtraks are blown to pieces, but the Americans manage to crawl onto the beaches to be met with what remains of their units.
You could see Amtraks that were knocked out, occasional body floating in the water or on the beach.
Yeah, there was carnage all over the place. We saw Marines' bodies. I hate to look at a dead Marine. So I always turned away. I just couldn't see it. I guess that was my weakness.
The Japanese defend from a series of concrete blockhouses and trench systems. The Americans are pinned down by a hail of lead.
Japanese with their machine guns were really butchering us. The way they had their machine guns and mortars arranged, they had us covered, you might say, for a couple hundred yards after you went inland from the beach itself.
A wall of fire rips the Americans apart. To stay on the beach means certain death.
Wasn't a very wide beach. We got pinned down there. Pretty tough to dig a foxhole in coral. And a lot of that beach was coral. It was not a pleasant day.
Despite the enemy bombardment, the Americans advanced through sheer blood and guts.
And we started to climb up out of the hole, And before we even got to the top, a heck of an explosion hit right on the edge, the top edge, and buried us with sand. Our ears were ringing, we had sand in our eyes and so forth, but had we been 2 or 3 seconds earlier, it would have completely wiped us out.
By 10:34 a.m., U.S. troops are 1,000 yards inland despite heavy losses.
It came down to a case where one man had to keep rushing straight ahead directly over the same path that maybe the man in front of him had just been gunned down in. That's a frightening thing to think about, to run in the same spot where another man fell. But that's what it took, and by the end of the day, they had made significant gains in the southern beachhead and pushed the Japanese back.
The Marines in the South dig in to protect their precarious beachhead. 7 miles north, their comrades have to climb a series of impenetrable ridges overlooking the invasion beaches. Japanese commander Takeshi Takeshina has these steep inclines laced with deadly machine gun posts and bunkers.
What they'd have to do is reach from rock to rock and sort of scale this 400-foot precipice.
The soil on top was loose, and it was very difficult to climb, and occasionally you could find a bush to get a hold of to help you.
Now, when you're using both hands to scale something, to grab onto a branch, you can't grab onto your rifle. You can't fire back. All you can do is take what is offered to you and hope that you reach the top.
One of the things the Japanese were doing on the ridge was they were high up, so they would roll grenades down that hill. And you'd see them coming, but you couldn't do very much about them, except try to get out of the way of them.
U.S. Marines are cut to pieces by the hidden machine guns.
This dumb young infantryman picked up a puny little carbine and he started to fire at the machine gun. I said, "Mom, I won't be coming home."
The Marines